A couple of disclaimers before I start. Number one, I redid the speech 3 times when I realized who am I speaking to. Number two, I have done a lot of talks in, I've talked to a couple of thousand people, and I've done presentations for like Caesar's Casino Management and like defending my ideas. This audience is far more nerve-wracking for me because, fellow game designers and fellow gamers, and I feel like you actually have the ability to judge. So I'll try to avoid the crap as much as possible and actually talk the things that I know about. So initially it was supposed to be about marketing your games and whatever, but I have never marketed any game, so there's no point of me to tell you how to market games. There are way more smarter people in this room who have done those things. So instead, I can tell you about things that I do know. And that's the knowledge of the game design that you're doing. That's the knowledge how to design games, but take that knowledge and apply it to anywhere else in the world. So I've used that knowledge. I've created a company called Adact. We do game-based marketing for creative agencies or brands or whatever. But I'm not going to stop on it too much. I can give you a little bit of an introduction who I am. So from the order of importance, I guess. I just hit level 18 in D&D 3.5. If anyone knows how to play D&D 3.5 and knows how to build a big wheeler, then let's please have a chat. I'm also #1 feral DPS and World of Warcraft Classic in the server. Anyone? No? I'm super proud of that. I've also played Magic the Gathering for most of my life. I've been to 15 different Grand Prix, although if any of my friends is watching, they all know that I really can't play the game. I just like the game. I also published a book on logical puzzles a couple of years ago, and I'm also a game design lecturer on Estonian Business School. So I've played a lot of games, and I've analyzed a lot of games. And I also kind of studied the ideas behind them. And I kind of, actually that's something that I already said, but I kind of focused my career into something that's called gamification. Gamification is the idea of using game elements in game design in a non-game context, in anywhere besides the games. So this is also officially the shortest talk I've ever done on the topic. So I'll try to cover 3 of these ideas, and hopefully you'll either recognize some of these and then get some inspiration or some ideas. How can you extend these ideas into other areas of career or life? So the first idea I'll talk about is the feedback. But before I can talk about the feedback, I'll give you a short introduction of the concept of gamification, which I have been working on. Not that I have been working on, but I've been working with. So gamification, the idea is, as I said, you will use game elements and game design, but not in games. Because the crux of the idea is that if there's something that really inspires us to play a game, and we can do it for like hours straight. We can play a single game for 10 more hours. Then why is it? What happens in a game that makes us so into it? So, and if you can kind of realize what's the reasons behind it, what's the feedback mechanism, what's the psychological aspect that makes us like it so much, then in theory we can apply the same things into anywhere else. And we will do it through different game elements. I've actually done a couple of articles in Medium as well, a couple of reviews and different gamified systems. If you're interested, you can have a look. And the example is like Duolingo. It's one of the most famous, I guess, gamified system where you learn a language, you gain points and levels and experience and so on. So throughout my career, these are the not average, but the most commonly used different game elements that I try to associate with different systems. Obvious are the points and badges and so on, but of course there's also like collaboration and sceneries and level design and so on. So one thing that I hold really dear, and I really hope that you do too when you design your games, is the idea of the game loops. Now, the problem with the game loops, in my opinion, is that there are so many different interpretations of what a game loop is and how to design a game loop, that if you will go into YouTube, for example, this is from Extra Credits. If you look at Extra Credits video on YouTube on game loops, then this is the game loop idea that they have. Right? So you will define some objective in a game, you will gather information about that objective, you will then form a hypothesis how to solve that objective, you will test it, whether it works, and then you observe the results and then make adjustments, right? That's one way of interpreting a game loop. Now, the other way is from another YouTube channel, just different phrases, different kind of approaches, but the problem with a lot of game designers is even though you know the concept of the game loop, you're not actually actively using it. You're not actively analyzing your system in the frame of a game loop. You're perhaps retrospectively thinking, how does my game have a game loop? But you're not making the initial design decisions based on this concept. At least as much as I've had conversation, then that's a very kind of common error. So when I think about game loops, so in game loops, the number one criteria why do I use a game loop is to understand, to have like the full understanding and the complexity of a given problem. So that's my first kind of assumption. That's the reason why I use it. The second thing is to keep the flow of gaming, not to break it. And I always test my game loops to this kind of idea, that whether any of those game loop steps actually might risk of breaking a game loop. And of course, as you know, a loop is defined, you should never have a defined finish. So my actual example from my own life, from my own client, who wanted a learning platform, right? And that's the idea of how can we use the simple, not simple, but how can you use the game design mechanism and use the same invaluable knowledge that you have as a game designers and then use it in anything else. So the client was someone who wanted to do a learning platform. In that platform, you had to take tests, and when you take tests, you get results, but they wanted to make it more fun, and that's why they looked into game designers and gamification. So in my feedback loop, I always, every single part of my project, every single client that I have always starts with this. I put down all of the activities that I know that are going to happen in this system. And then I'm going to start writing down the, some ideas or some concepts that are fitting between those two steps. So because I don't have too much time, I'm not going to go through them one by one, but for example, for that learning platform, this is what my game loop would look like. Now, this is not a standard game loop. This is not something that you will learn from YouTube or something. This is just something that fits me very well. So if I would imagine that the entire loop is learning a language in that learning language platform, then I will go from, let's say, I would imagine I will start my loop, or explanation from the results, right? So I know from game design that when you show results, then you should, not you should, but very often in specific scenarios, it's better to show results gradually, or ticking up, not just put them in the screen. So that's something that I will have in mind in here. The topic of rewards, how scarce should the rewards be? It's an entire book full of topic in game design, when and how much should you reward those players, but I know that there should be some kind of a reward. Then I know that part of this game loop that keeps people going is the proof of improvement. At some point in the loop, I need to prove to the player that they have improved. Then I also have to explain to them why do they need to advance. After they understand that I have improved so much, then why should I keep on improving? Then I should give them a way on how to advance, how to achieve that advancement. And then I will show them the test. Once they start doing the test, and also from a game design perspective, it's I show one of the games, actually most of the platformer indie games that I have, demoed in here as well, do it very well. The frictional start thing, you're not going to have a countdown every time you die, 3, 2, 1, and then wait till you start playing again. In platformer games, it's awesome. If you die, you just instantly start over again. That's the idea of frictional start. Then, defining the appropriate challenge level. Which sorts of questions should I show to that user who's taking the tests? And all of these kind of things, it's actually the exact same. If I will design a game from scratch, or if I will design a level for a game from scratch, this is how I will, think about it, right? It's not enough to have a game loop that just, move, wait, kill, repeat. Right? It doesn't help you make any decisions in your designs. And the more kind of detailed way you try to answer and ask questions within your game loop, the more you get answers into how should you make design decisions. And then, because I'm actually talking from a point of gamification, meaning this, as you remember, is a language learning platform, then I will add game elements to this loop. I will then start understanding how would I use currency in any of those game loop steps? How would I use competition in any of those game loop steps? Can I, for example, use the element of competition in the reason of why to advance? And this is how I design this kind of a language learning platform purely from the knowledge of game design. So I've actually done one of the other examples that I did. I worked with Volkswagen. They had a campaign called Rule the Road. And Rule the Road was actually nothing more than a game. It was an Instagram kind of campaign where people, you had to log into Instagram. Then from their Instagram page, you will have to find several clues. You will have to report those clues and then participate in the raffle. Now, I shit you not, this exact thing here, this loop with, of course, different kind of titles and different texts, is the exact same thing I presented to the Volkswagen, or actually Deutsche is the agency, in order to design this campaign. So I guess one thing that I want to give or explain through this kind of eyes or this approach is the importance of this game design loops. And it's not only for games. It's pretty much every aspect of life that you want to design. The second thing that I really love, and I will hope that more people, both in game design and outside game design, will use this concept, is a thing called endowed progress, or some call it pseudo progress. Endowment progression is actually nothing more than the claim that if you provide some kind of artificial advancement towards a goal, then a person or a player is more motivated to complete that goal. That is actually the exact definition from the research. So what it basically means, in game design perspective, if you will have a quest in, any MMO to kill 10 boars, then it will work better if you will tell that player to kill 12 boars, but I have already killed 2 for you. So the overall distance to the goal doesn't change. Both scenarios, the player has to kill 10 boars. But the 2 boars that I've killed for you, this is the part of the endowment progression. And this simple aspect has been proven from time and time again, and I'll send you the slides later, which has the entire research as well, that this gives better results in terms of motivation and the probability of the player actually finishing a goal. So another example where you could use it, so for example, let's say, you have you're playing Left 4 Dead or some kind of a survival game, and you will have dialogue. Right? And that dialogue, Left 4 Dead wasn't a good example. So you will have a dialogue, let's say the NPC will tell you that, we need to make this car work. To get out of this whatever location, I managed to salvage a battery, go find some fuel, right? So the guest in that scenario will be for you to find some fuel to make the car work again. So you could do it, if you will actually have a quest log and quest title and quest assignment, you can do it like this. Your quest is to repair the car, and in order to finish this quest, you need to find some fuel. But with endowment progression in mind, if you want to design it better and give them more psychological motivation of why they should do it, you should do it like this. So you will say that you have already done something. You have already progressed towards your goal, although you haven't. Because as you remember from the dialogue was built up in a way that I've managed to salvage a battery already. And this is the key part, right? And because of this, you're now allowed to show that 50% of the quest is already completed, and you only have to do one more thing. So the way that this was proven to work is through a research called endowment progression effect, how artificial advancement increases effort. It's a very interesting research, and usually I go through all of the hypotheses that happen in the research, but I'm not going to go here, but I'll highly suggest going into it. The way that they proved it is, do you know Boston car wash study? Anyone? No? Cool. Yeah. So, idea is, Boston car wash study, you will have 300 participants, right? There was a car wash that invited, like, first 300 participants were given a gift card, like a stamp card. Every time you will stamp a card, every time you come in for a car wash, we will stamp your car, and you will eventually get a free car wash. 150 of them were given the one on the left, which has 8 stamps. 150 of them were given the one on the right, which has 10 stamps, but 2 of them were already stamped. So basically, they wanted to know which one of them would provide better results. The end result here, and this is the endowment progression and the endowment effect that they showed, almost twice as many people from the 150 returned the one that had endowment progression on it. So the research also has a couple of graphs. It has more hypotheses to prove, and I'll just explain shortly what they are. And right now, you just have to take my word for it, that they are actually true. If you want, we can have a longer discussion after the talk, and I can prove it all. So number one is that the idea that the fictional progress helps. This is what I just showed you, how they tested it. Number two is the more closer a person gets to a goal, the more effort they put into it. So how did they prove that? Is they measure the time between 2 car washes based on the number of how many times have they already been to it. And you can see that the more stamps they have in their card, the more stamps they have in that loyalty card, the shorter the time was on average between 2 car washes. And you can see the same effect in games as well. If you have a chained quest line or whatever, then the average time completing the last quests in the chain are much shorter and much more probable to succeed than if you had just started a quest chain. So the idea is the more closer to the end of the goal you are, the more effort you put into it. And just kind of keep that in mind. Number 3 is using larger number helps. I've seen this from our own examples as well. So what we do in Edact is we create those kinds of marketing games, which are, just very simple, kind of hyper-casual gaming. But the idea is, if you will give someone 100 points for an action, it's worse if you will give them 1,000 points for an action. And that's exactly as simple as it is. Of course, you can't go overboard, but in very short detail, using larger numbers helps. And number 4 is providing a reason for endowment effect to occur. So if we look at this example, when you say that, take this card, and I've stamped 2 cards for you, without saying anything, that gives worse results if you will say, take this card, I have stamped 2 cards for you because I believe that you're such a loyal customer. So that's the idea of providing a reason. So all of those things are explained in the research, and I would highly recommend you go through it. So, and the last part that I wanted to say, how really this kind of being inside the world of game design and how kind of using this game design thinking has very much helped me in terms of doing, from workshops to marketing to everything. And that's called framing. It's not like I tried to find people on YouTube talking about it as well, but I couldn't. So either I'm making it up or people are not putting focus into it, and I'm not making it up. So this is the kind of simple idea that I sometimes use. So if you will imagine you're in a room full of 5 people, and you will give every person a card, a face-up. And then you will say that a person who has the ace of hearts will win. That's literally, like, I don't even know if in any kind of universe you can call it a game, but I guess it has rules to win, so you can, but it's a very shitty game because, everybody sees the cards and whatever. If you will turn them upside down and hand everyone an upside down card, the end result doesn't change. The person who's going to win is going to win. And then you're going to say, everybody roll the die. Whoever rolls a 6 the first turns their card over. And if it's an ace of hearts, they're going to win. Or you introduce some game elements or whatever. The idea is you're not changing the mechanics of anything. The only thing you're doing is providing game elements and providing this. You're framing an activity as a game. And that's something that another research did. It's one of my favorite researches, and I am the guy who has a favorite research. So what they did was they will gather 3 groups of people in a room. And it's like this kind of a huge corporation, business, whatever. And the idea is that all those people start giving feedback. How can we improve the work process, whatever? Like our business has such and such problems. We need to fix them. Now, group number 1, they were sitting around the table and they had a stack of problems. One person took the problem, explained it to the group. Everybody tried to solve it, right? So group number 2, they're basically just reading out cards and just bouncing off ideas. Group number 2 was given this. As you see, it's a board game. But the thing is, in that board game, nothing happened. They had a board game and everyone had their own piece. But the game actually looked like one person will take up a card. And if you do that, you will place your game marker at the start of the game. Once everybody are finished discussing, then the next person will take a game marker and put it on the board game. And every time you will ask a question or take up the card to discuss about a problem, you will just move your marker one step further. There were no winners, no losers, there was no game mechanic. It's just literally the physical activity of doing something with game objects. And then the third group was given the same exact game, but every time they finished discussing this problem, they would vote on who gave the most input. And that person who gave the most input, they will manage to move their game piece one step further. So the idea of this experiment is you will have a group that doesn't have any single game, it's just talking. You will have a group that is framing the activity of talking as a game, but there's no game behind it. You're just using elements and whatever. And then you had a third group who actually played the game. And the results? So before this experiment ended, the organizer went out of the room, said like, okay, this experiment is over. For the next 30 minutes, you just can do whatever whatever you want, and then we'll give you the results. So what happened was group number 1, they just stopped playing. They just stopped discussing the problems. They went, smartphones and whatever. So group number 2 and group number 3 actually continued playing the game. Group number 2 for an average of 6 minutes, but group number 3, the entire length of the 30-minute pause. So, when they eventually gathered the results, the most quality feedback and the most engaging feedback came from group number 3, but the people who enjoyed the activity the most was from group number 2. Those people who didn't play a single game, they just framed the activity as a game. So the point here is whichever kind of, you can use it anywhere in either marketing or sales or just, cleaning your house or whatever. The knowledge that you get from game design and the knowledge for developing those indie games and having people test them and then making analytical assumptions of what works and what doesn't and how does the gameplay makes people feel, that's actually something that I will add it into school criteria because it's in my eyes it's such a kind of invaluable skill to have, and the only way to have it is actually start designing games and making those analytical decisions in games. So we will have the knowledge of how to use it outside of the games. So these are the 3 kind of ideas that I wanted to talk about. In order of priority, in terms of if you're doing games. This is it's so simple. It really is. It's so simple to utilize. It's so simple to use. So I'll send you the slides later. And if you're trying to improve your game, go read that research. I don't know if there is a link somewhere. Yeah, go read that research. It takes you like an hour of your time. It's very well written. And try to use it in your games. The second thing is when you're doing game loops, where are you? When you're doing game loops, do them because they have a reason. Don't just do them, or don't just think about them retrospectively. Don't just, create the game and then eventually think, oh yeah, I guess my game has a game loop. Start working on it from literal analytical viewpoint from day one. And it will make all of your decisions so much simpler in the future. Because when you're making, like, for example, if I will have an idea in the Volkswagen campaign to change one element, to change a point system, I will have the entire kind of graph of what else does it affect in my system. I'm not just doing random decisions. And if you have any ideas on how to use framing in terms of your marketing or whatever, then I'll be very excited to see, because I haven't seen anyone done it. Anyway, time's up, as much as the TV tells me. And again, I initially thought that it's going to be more about the marketing side of things, but I think I will let the marketing, the people who have actually marketed their games, do the marketing talk. So thank you. I actually have a last slide that has my contact information. If you want to get in contact. Here it is. No, it is not. Here it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kalev. Thanks for joining us today. If anyone has a question to ask. One question over there.
All right, so you talked about the endowment progression.
Yeah.
How blatant can you be with that? Because I imagine you can't really do it every single step of the way if you have a quest or whatever task you want to do. You can't just be like, oh, well, you've already done this. You know, I talked about it before. Here's the reason for it. But you can't be too blatant about it. Like, how often can you give them a reason for that?
So, it's 100% my own personal opinion. There's no, like, I haven't read any research or any arguments about it, but my own personal opinion is when you look at game design right now, when your game is designed in this kind of a, what's it called, this kind of a set piece design system, right? When your game is designed to have one very large set piece, and then in that set piece, like a bunch of different actions happen, then like my personal opinion will be like, once in this one large kind of piece, if you're doing like a small platformer, then I think you're right. You shouldn't just kind of use it every single time. It becomes obvious and annoying, I guess. But again, yeah, I cannot give you an actual answer. It's just my own opinion. Actually, to be honest, I don't think even overusing it does anything bad. I mean, it's the same idea of overusing this. You know, when you see in Facebook, you have this market or like random articles, like, you know, top 10 list of stupid things famous people have did. You never guess what the fifth thing is, right? If you look 10 of them, they still work the same. Like psychologically, they still have the same effect. So I guess you can just try and go all out. I don't know.
Another question? Well, I have one. So, how do you think how scalable those experiments are?
What?
How scalable those experiments are?
Oh, it's actually a very interesting question. So in terms of scalability, you mean like, will the results be the same if instead of 300 people, there will be 3,000? Well, that's the beauty of statistics and beauty of research, in a sense of you have enough people that mathematically the results that we get are valid up to some acceptance criteria. So the idea of those numbers are that mathematically, if we will have 3,000 people, the results are the same. So just from a mathematical standpoint, they are scalable. At least this one that I linked to. So yeah, I think it's hard to descale them. I think they are scalable.
Right. Thank you very much. And from